What's up, everybody? Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin, John.
And we have yet another album review for you, or rather two, because yet again, another band has put out two albums this year, just like Ulthar did, but vastly different than Ulthar. So today we are going to go over both new releases from the Acacia Strain, Step Into the Light and Failure Will Follow. Both of these came out on the 12th of May on Rise Records. The band formed in 2001 in Chicopee, Massachusetts. This is their 11th and 12th album. I don't know which one. I think they came out at the same time, so whichever one you listen to first, that's the 11th album, and then the next one's the 12th album. All right?
That's fair.
That's fair enough. And for those that don't know, this is a disgusting, down-tempo deathcore act. They've been around forever. They've been fucking stuffing heads forever because this band is all about chugs and violence and breakdowns. And, I mean, really consistent band overall. I've been a big fan of them for years. I mean, I started with their first album, and I'm really not the biggest fan of that one, but when it came down to Continent was the kind of the game changer for me.
Dude, Continent, and then Wormwood.
Yeah.
And then Death is the Only Immortal. I mean, those were three big ones for me.
And the last EP, It Comes in Waves, and their last album, Slow Decay, were both really good, too. So, yeah, we wanted to check this one out. And if anything, Acacia Strain always delivers on heavy and also Hating a Mirror, which I'm also all for. Now, when I read about them coming out with two albums, initially I was like, all right, that's pretty ambitious. But they said they were going to be decidedly different. One being more short, fast, aggressive songs, and then the other one being much slower, much more moody and dark. So I was like, all right, well, this should be interesting, and I'm kind of curious about the results, because Acacia Strain is mostly sort of like a mid-tempo sort of chug-a-thon.
Yeah.
Like, you know, big on the syncopated grooves, big on just violent lyrics, and just kind of rocking this massive guitar tone and just, you know, inspiring fucking pits. So hearing them do two albums that are a little bit different and slightly outside of what they do is an interesting prospect.
Yeah.
So we're going to go over Step Into the Light first, because that was the first one we listened to, so I guess that's the 11th album now.
I guess.
And this is the more up-tempo, fast one, and it's pretty evident right away with tracks like Flourishing and Calves Blood and Chain that they were really embracing a lot more of just straight-up hardcore, D-beat, crust, and grindcore.
Yeah, and I didn't see that coming, because, again, normally these guys being more mid-tempo and slow, you think you're just going to get a bunch of chuggy, stank-faced riffs, which are still in here, but these are notably different in the sense that they're grindy. I wrote grindy 3 times.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised by that.
And most notably, when I say grindy too, you kind of have the guitar tone that feeds into that. The guitars are super gritty. I mean, they're chuggy, but they're gritty. There's a lot of fuzz on them. The bass snarls.
It absolutely sizzles. Like, this bass is literally on a giant skillet filled with fucking bacon grease. Like, there's just this crackle to it.
The drums are thin, but they're punchy, which gives it that hardcore feel.
Yeah, I mean, lots of D beats, but of course, because it's Acacia Strain, we expect some down-tempo chugs, and of course, there's plenty on here. Songs like Fresh Bones and Open Wound, and one of the heaviest tracks in here, Is This Really Happening? Yes, it is. Massive down-tempo breakdowns, which, I mean, Acacia Strain's great at building those up. Like, they will kind of do like an avalanche of breakdowns. Like, you'll get like this one syncopated chug, it's awesome. Brief pause. Vince yells out something about how much he hates your fucking guts. And then it slows down a step. It'll pretty much do the same thing, except even more visceral, and slow it down to like the most brutal single chugs that, well, Acacia Strain can deliver at the moment.
And when you talk about songs with beatdown, the song Sinkhole, I think, puts it rather poignantly, where it says, "Fuck you, die slow." It is one of the vocal lines in there, and that song kind of brings that whole emotive with it.
It chants that line quite a few times just to make sure that you know that's what you should do according to them.
Yep. Really, I think the back half of this record, everything from Open Wound on, I think just really rips. Is This Really Happening is one of their more violently heavy songs that I've come to love from the Acacia Strain. Chuggy start, chuggy grooves, some cool hi-hat work, and then some more chuggies.
I mean, chug is the thing that they do so well. Also, I like the fact that they squeeze in like a little bit of ambiance. There's some interesting like production flair on here with like phasing out stuff and dropping out stuff. And you occasionally get some more like ambiance kind of scattered around here just to, build the mood. But honestly, when it comes down to building, a lot of it is due to like the dropouts and build backups. And I wouldn't say like this is like completely far removed in terms of like the band experimenting, because Acacia Strain has some faster songs. Like occasionally you get pockets of blast beats, occasionally you get like some good D beat stompers, and those are all on here, but just in shorter condensed form. In fact, a good chunk of this album doesn't eclipse the 2-minute mark, and honestly the rest of it outside of one track doesn't eclipse the 3-minute mark.
Yeah, in fact, Sinkhole, which we referenced earlier, is 4 minutes and 2 seconds. It's the only song on this whole album that gets to that mark. Most of it is just really short, really violent.
Yeah, and within these condensed songs you get a lot of like sharp, jagged transitions that sometimes kind of throw the song off. Like you have some really interesting moments that kind of just come in and leave and maybe should be explored a little bit more. Like there's a really interesting blast and like, D-beat section that pops up on None of Us Asked to Be Here. And then it just sort of abandons it and kind of goes into the big syncopated stomping chugs. So like in terms of this being like vastly different, this one still is very close to home for the Acacia Strain. So, I mean, it's close to what you'd expect from them, just maybe a little bit faster. I will say like the grindy moments definitely add a different layer of visceral, ugly energy, which, the Acacia Strain are known for. And outside of like the big down-tempo breakdowns, there's some like legit doomy riffs on here. Like not just a syncopated chug, but like one that actually has like a chord progression that, kind of screams more doom metal. Teeth of the Cursed Dog has a really good doom riff on it. The last riff that closes out None of Us Asked to Be Here is particularly doomy and sludgy, like a little bit of Crowbar kind of just crept its way in there. And Is This Really Happening kind of runs the gamut of different breakdowns. Like you have like more brutal death metal, sort of like, syncopated chug, like some flat out deathcore down-tempo stuff, but you also have, again, like flat out doom metal riffs just kind of played in a deathcore fashion.
What's most entertaining I found for this is that there's a lot of dynamic in very short songs. Most of these songs, again, the 1 minute mark, maybe the 2 minute mark, maybe the 3 minute mark, and only one 4 minute mark. There's a lot going on, and I like some of the ways that they use transitions, especially in songs like Calf's Blood, Teeth of the Cursed Dog, and Sinkhole. In these songs, they use isolated moments. You get isolated guitar, isolated bass, isolated drums, isolated vocals. Probably one of the first times I hear it more prominent in a record, like to occur so many times.
Yeah, and I think they do some really cool stuff with the atmosphere. Like, Is This Really Happening has like a really interesting like build up after the little dancey hi-hat. You hear kind of noise in the background. It almost sounds like a panicked mob. And there's like maybe some spoken word over it, but it's something that sort of heightens the tension in the moment. And they have some like interesting backup vocalists on here, namely Jacob Lilly of the band Chamber and Joseph Alfonso of Tsunami. And his appearance on Sinkhole has like some really good raw, just straightforward hardcore vocals. Like he sounds exhausted as hell. Like he had to run around the studio and it was winter and he had to smoke a pack of cools while doing it. Like it's very raw and very throaty, and it adds a cool dynamic because it's vastly different than Vince's Roar, which is powerful.
He's the fuck you die slow guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then they chanted it together, so they both mean it. As for negatives on here, it comes down to like a lot of the transitions. Like I feel like this is just a shortened down form of what they usually do, and then the stuff that is outside of their element, possibly, like arguably, like the more grindcore moments, I don't think they do quite enough, because towards the end of the album, while I like it because it's very familiar, because it sounds like Acacia Strain, it kind of just feels like them kind of settling in and maybe not necessarily committing to doing all the crazy shit they were doing earlier in the album.
Yeah, the last probably 5-6 songs are actually voided of those elements. They're not... Like, you get a couple of fast moments, but for the most part, they sink into the heavy fucking chuggy slowness that they always do, and the grindcore is just, like, gone.
Then I gotta say the artwork for both of these is just a little odd. Like, I don't know, I feel like I'm looking at like pieces that are hanging up in a rustic hotel in Colorado or something like that. It's just odd. Like, you know, this album's music does not reflect its album covers, which is, I don't know, kind of strange to me.
That's fair.
But overall, I thought this was pretty good. You know, in terms of experimentation, I don't think they really experimented as much, but I thought it was pretty well executed. So overall, I'm going to give it 3 stars. This one was fun. Like, this one was just rowdy. It's kind of the beat downs you expect from Acacia Strain, albeit with like a little bit of grind and kind of like extra old hardcore kind of like peppered in there a bit more. But I mean, if you like Acacia Strain, a lot of this is going to be very familiar to you. And if anything, it just sounds like, you know, you're just playing it a bit faster, because they are. It's heavy. It's fucking nasty. That's what I pretty much expect from this band. So yeah, check it out.
I'm in that boat too. It's also 3 stars. It wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be based on what they were saying it was going to be. 2 albums separated, one being a lot more violent and fast, and it was in the beginning, but that lasted, you know, the first 3 songs are like a minute and a half apiece. So you got in grand total 4.5 minutes of fast, you know, grindy hardcore, and then it immediately sinks back to the Acacia Strain. Now, that's not a bad thing. I do like the Acacia Strain. I like all their slow, chuggy moments because that's what this band is. The first half, I would say, or the first third of this album is fast and grindy and experimental, and the last half would be pretty much what you come to expect. Therefore, it's a 3. It's not bad. It's not overly great, but it's the Acacia Strain and all the things I love. So 3 stars. Check it out for yourself. Don't listen to me. Who the fuck am I?
Jammin' John, you said earlier.
I mean, I am Jammin' John.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, you know that.
Yeah.
But listen to it for yourself. If you're a fan of this band, at least the last 7 songs of this album are really going to speak to you.
So like I said, 2 albums, 2 vastly different albums, and they definitely delivered on it, because Failure Will Follow is the most different thing they've ever released,
yes.
Honestly. This is slow and brooding. Every track is over 10 minutes. Hell, one of them is over 15 minutes. And this is where they just kind of get outside of what they usually do. And I think that is large in part to some of their guests. The first track, Pillar of Salt, actually has Dylan Walker of Full of Hell. And the last track, Basin of Vows, actually has Ethan McCarthy of Primitive Man. And their influence is definitely fucking felt on here.
In fact, the Primitive Man influence is drenched all over this album, and I fucking love Primitive Man. You can tell that the band has definitely paid close attention.
Yeah, because, you know, this is more about atmosphere, more about just extending moments, adding layers. The weaponized chugging that they're absolutely known for is done differently here. It's more about contributing to the atmosphere. So like big droning chugs with waves of synths and noise in the background. The opening track, Pillar of Salt, is a great example of that. It has a long keyboard build up, like these big droning kind of moody evil synths.
Yep.
Before you actually get into like the big syncopated chugs, but there's lots of space between them.
Yeah, they're dissonant and ambient, and it just not what you would come to expect.
It's more dark and cathartic. And that's kind of different in terms of the Acacia Strain in general, because most of the time, in terms of their themes, I think of, yeah, Vince wants to beat the shit out of someone. This doesn't have that vibe. This has a vibe of like dark, reflective stuff, and it's really good. Dylan's vocal performance on here with his screaming fits is feral.
It's disturbing. Caustically heavy. Actually, I got reminded of Portal quite a few times.
Slowed down.
Yeah, but slowed down. The things that I would say about describing Primitive Man or anything really caustically heavy like that. This isn't just heavy, it's gnarly.
Yeah. The use of more ambiance, like, you know, we brought that up in the last one, but it's really way more effective here because the songs are not only longer, but there's more empty space to fill with all sorts of noises. Like the keyboard intro, like you start hearing like weird chirping in terms of like computer noises. It sounds like a cardiogram having a fucking fit. Like they put it on a fucking hamster on meth or something. And in terms of the dropouts, generally when Acacia Strain drops out, you know, kind of isolate shit, it's generally a big chug that is leading into a breakdown. there's a drop on here that leads into like clean guitars, like an actual melody, and then it sort of builds up into not necessarily like, one of their standard breakdowns. It's again more of like a doomy riff, like a sludgy Neurosis riff.
Yeah, and in this case, when the big dropout happens in this song, they use that melody to transition into what happens next. But what happens next is totally something I didn't expect. It's very like sad, doomy, dreary female vocals.
Yeah.
Very pretty. There's almost a bright moment to the melody, too.
I ain't that bright. It's pretty fucking haunting. But, it's a really interesting shift. Kind of reminds me of, like, the stuff that Thou has done with Emma Ruth Rundle. Like, sort of that, like, it's doomy, it's bleak, but you have these very haunting vocals. And, just when you think it's going to end on that, it peppers in one little fucking giant breakdown at the end. The big surprise, though, is the song Bog Walker.
Holy shit.
The first 3 minutes of the song is an isolated stoner doom riff. You could have told me we were listening to Sleep or Monolord, and I probably would have believed you because this sounds so unlike the Acacia Strain. It's a giant stoner doom song.
Yep, and that doomy riff, that doomy, fuzzy, beautiful stoner riff lasts about 3.5 minutes. It takes a minute to get there, but when it does, go.
Sabbath Swings. It's totally different. Like, there's a warmth to the sound. Like, I've never heard them utilize the guitars like this in a song ever. Like, they have some doomier moments that are kind of peppered in their work over the years, but nothing like this. Now, this one actually has a guest, Sam Sawyer, which I don't think he's attached to any bands, at least as far as I could find. I think he's a friend of the band, but he contributes, like, clean vocals and, like, a really cool spoken word. And, again, it just sort of changes the mood. Now, unfortunately for me, when Vince comes in and starts barking over these big stoner doom riffs, it just doesn't fit for me. But later on, there's another cool build-up into one of the heaviest fucking moments on this entire fucking album.
Possibly one of the heaviest moments the Acacia Strain has ever had, and that's a bold fucking statement.
It's crushing.
Yeah, it's so stank-faced, like just ugh.
It's gross. And how they lead up to this moment, I think, is really clever because it's another dropout, but it stays with clean guitars, no percussion, but you get a spoken word in here. And I swear to God, the dude sounds like Kiefer Sutherland. Like, that's the only person I can think of right there. Like, it sounds like maybe Mike Patton, but I don't know. I hear Kiefer Sutherland a lot. But how it builds up, like, he kind of just talks for a little while. It seems like he's getting more into the story he's telling, and then the percussion starts lightly building behind him.
Light tribal drums, a really light melody.
It's like a post-metal, sort of version of a hardcore build-up where they just fucking slam the fucking floor toms. But then it comes right back to that Sabbath swing, and it bookends that riff.
Dude, super sexy groove too. I didn't know the Acacia Strain was capable of this either. It's more of like a jazzy kind of like swing groove thing, like a just sexy fucking bass taking a walk. And
again, very, very Sabbath. Legit, this is my favorite song on here. I absolutely loved it. And then we have Basin of Vows, which features Ethan McCarthy, a Primitive Man, and this thing's dark. This thing's dark and chuggy. Pockets of, ambient sort of post-metal stuff. Like, there's definitely some Cult of Luna and Isis influence that kind of squeaks in there in terms of, like, mood building. And even, of course, some giant doom riffs would actually sound like, Black Sabbath, like, the song.
Although we get towards the end of the song, and after the stank-faced breakdown in here, because believe me, it's in here, it just gets a little repetitive. Like, it keeps switching to this, like, another stoner doom melody, which is cool, but they overuse it.
I think that's kind of an issue on this album, is some of these songs do feel a little drawn out at points. Like, they just sort of take measures and kind of go on with them. And for the most part, I don't have much of an issue with that, but on this song, like, there's a sort of a static chug that kind of goes on for a good chunk of this. And that stoner doom moment is like a cool little accent, but it's not revisited very often. The post-metal buildup is probably the thing that I'd like the most on this song. That and the kind of haunting synth and riff melody at the end. But for this album, this one definitely was way more experimental for him. And honestly, the moments that they experimented and really locked onto some different sounds were some of the best on here. It was when they kind of stuck to their guns on these longer songs that it kind of dragged a bit. I love Acacia Strain for all the pummeling chugs that they deliver on every album, but in this case, some of it was probably better in smaller doses. But again, the stuff that they got outside on, like that was really cool. Like I don't think they should legit change their sound, but I would definitely say that they're good at more than what they usually do.
Correct. I'm actually proud of this experimentation. Like they brought some things to the table that they've never brought to the table before. And even though I think they've flirted with caustically heavy things, like the implementation of doom and sludge and pure filth, I thought was spectacular.
As far as negatives, I mean, I think I pretty much brought up the, just some of these songs kind of dragged in certain spots, but overall, I really enjoyed this. In fact, this was kind of an interesting surprise, especially Bog Walker. Like, if I was going to recommend one track that you will need 17 minutes of time blocked out for, listen to that one. It's absolutely incredible. So overall, I'm going to give this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed this one. At points, yeah, it did drag, but for the most part, this is a band kind of getting slightly outside of their wheelhouse and doing something really fucking awesome with it. Bog Walker is a giant fucking standout. Like, I liked all these tracks, but that one completely caught me off guard with the warmth, the riffs, the whole mood of it. It is so outside of the Acacia Strain's box usually that you could have told me it was a different band and, Vincent was kind of guesting with them. I was like, yeah, no, that totally makes sense. It delivers heavy in a different way for them, and it's fucking awesome. Pillar of Salt really nails that atmospheric vibe. It's dark and sinister. Same thing with Basin of Vows, too. This is really solid, and this is definitely not indicative of their sound overall, but if they chose to do it again, I would have no problem with it. So yeah, check this out.
I'm also going to give this a 4. To be honest, I was grossly entertained by this entire record. I think that they did a great job in their experimentation with doom and sludge. Like, I didn't see that coming. It was done beautifully. Yeah, there's a couple moments that drag a little bit, and yeah, some of those transitions are iffy in the way they do them. But overall, I had a great time. I don't think they've ever been as heavy as they've been on this album. And they definitely aren't Do Me Anywhere Else. Dude, Bog Walker whoops ass. I just got a rental car myself because, well, there's a deer on the cover of this album that looks like it was attacked by an HHR.
Rabid one.
I used to drive an HHR. I don't anymore because fuck deer. But now I have a car with a killer sound system and I can't wait to listen to Bog Walker. Anyway, getting off track, I think outside of the couple things that I had only slight issue with, I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing that they're doing. And, while I don't hope that they completely abandon their sound, because I really like the Acacia Strain for the heavy band that they are, I want to see more of this anyway, because this was pretty fucking sweet. So it's a 4 for me, through and through.
So I guess like a 3.5 overall, for both. Yeah, we'll go with that. So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there, as well as our store, which we will be loading up on stuff. We just need to get past the idea phase. That takes some time, but we're going to do it. We also have a giveaway going on. Once we hit 15K, I'm going to give away a stack of 10 CDs to some lucky rabid metalhead. All you have to do is click the link down below or go to our channel. The video should be playing automatically. We just need a comment on there and you are entered. Because, 15K, fucking crazy. It's amazing.
Yeah, dude, it's ridiculous.
And it's all because of you guys. You guys got us here, and I don't know if you should have. That was horribly irresponsible of you, but here we are. And it's been a blast so far. Thank you all so much for all your support, coming up and saying hi to us at shows.
Hats off to you. I don't take the hat off often, but hats off to all of you.
I'm not taking off my hat. But seriously, you guys are the real heroes here. We have a ton of different content coming your way, so stay tuned. And with that, I will thank you one more time because you've been good, and we will catch you later.